Hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. Just before we kick it off, Kyle, I want to introduce Anne. Anne is our ASL interpreter. Thank you, Anne. Thank you very much for being here. We appreciate both Anne and Meadow here for the lovely things they're doing. So thank you very much for all your effort. Kyle?
Absolutely. Hey, how's it going, Sumita? I hear that we are going to be talking about some pretty interesting stuff today. You want to tell us a little bit about what you're going to be covering?
Sure. As an introduction, I'm Sumedha. I'm a principal PM in the SageMaker Studio team. And I work on with our customers to simplify their workflows, to perform data engineering, data science. And of late, I have been focused on trying to build SageMaker Studio as the IDE of choice for interactive data science and data engineering workflows. And I'm going to be showing you a really exciting demo here. I heard a lot about, oh, machine learning is hard, and how do we actually get started? Can you give us an example?
Yes.
I'm going to walk you through an example today.
Awesome.
Where we are going to do data engineering, data pre-processing. We're going to train a model, we're going to deploy a model, and we're also going to get a prediction wherein if you enter a movie review, we will predict whether it is a positive review or a negative review. So that's the example I want to walk you through. And as a part of this demonstration, I want you can analytic sources such as Amazon, say, EMR, perform big data analytics, how you can perform the training and machine learning, essentially the end-to-end ML workflow, how you can do it without even leaving your SageMaker Studio window. So that's what I want to demonstrate today.
Excellent. So, Mira, tell us when we can bring your screen up here. So, can we do it now?
Oh, yeah, sure. You can go ahead.
Okay. Boom. Tell us what you're going to be doing.
Cool.
One first thing, can you please just expand the font a bit so we can see? We make sure that people can see it a bit more clearly. So if you can zoom in a bit, if that is possible. Maybe your browser can zoom in or something. There we go.
There we go.
Good.
All right. So,
go.
Real quick, Sumita, I was just curious. So this is SageMaker Studio, and this is kind of what you had just mentioned, and also what Julia was previously speaking about, right? So could you tell me a little bit about SageMaker Studio and like what exactly are we looking at right here? And you're also on mute.
Are you able to hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. That's a great question, Kyle. SageMaker Studio is the first machine learning IDE. And with SageMaker Studio, you will be able to perform all of the end-to-end machine learning tasks with this IDE. Specifically, you'll be able to prepare your data. You'll be able to build your models, train and tune them, and you'll be able to deploy and manage them all within the same IDE itself. So SageMaker Studio serves as the one-stop shop for end-to-end machine learning development.
Oh, wow. Okay, so several different types of workflows and capabilities all wrapped into one studio or IDE.
That is correct. It is a feature-rich IDE, and I strongly recommend you to explore this for all of your machine learning workflows.
Well, with all this amazing talk of SageMaker, I'm definitely going to be checking out some of this stuff, that's for sure.
Awesome. So continuing along, what I want to showcase today is how you can perform interactive data engineering and data science workflows within SageMaker Studio itself. So the example that I am showcasing here is one wherein I will show you how you can connect to an Amazon EMR cluster, how you can run big data processing directly from SageMaker Studio, use that data to train a model and deploy it and get some predictions. Now let's talk a little bit about why I am showcasing this demo, right? Like what is it that made us feel like, hey, maybe we should actually be showcasing this demo? Now, one of the trends that we're seeing in the industry is many of the data workers, specifically data engineers, data scientists, data analysts, they are collaborating more closely with each other than ever before. For example, a data engineer uses Spark, Apache Spark, to build an ETL pipeline to prepare data. Now, a data scientist can use exactly that same data to build machine learning models. But today, while these data personas are collaborating, they have to hop between different tools to actually accomplish their workflows. Now, this may not be that big of a problem but you also need to realize that sometimes it's the same person doing all of these tasks. The same person can actually wear the hat of a data engineer, they can wear the hat of a data scientist, and hopping between multiple tools and multiple interfaces reduces the productivity of our data workers. And
so you're saying essentially like this process could either be done by an individual or a team, but like they are possibly working on several different types of software or tools, and they kind of have to glue these things together themselves.
Yeah, that is correct. And I'll give you a very specific example as I go along as to how this actually affects productivity. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to say, how can we build SageMaker Studio into the one platform where you can perform all of your interactive data engineering and data science workflows? And that's really the motivation for showcasing this demo and this new capability that I'm going to be talking about.
Got it. Okay. So where do we start?
Okay, cool. So let's get started. The first step in the process is I would like to first get connected to an EMR cluster because I want to be able to query a Hive table, retrieve data, and really understand more the shape of the data. I want to understand that. Now, if you want to do that today without all of the functionality that I'm going to talk about, you'll require to go to an EMR console, get the cluster ID, come back to SageMaker Studio, open a new terminal. If you're using a Kerberized EMR cluster, you need to get a Kerberos ticket. You need to open a terminal, get a Kerberos ticket, restart the kernel. It's a fairly cumbersome process to just get connected to an EMR cluster. And so what we're doing is we are greatly simplifying this workflow. We're introducing the ability to visually browse, discover, connect to an EMR cluster. What you can do is, we've introduced this button called cluster. You hit this button, and you will be able to see all of the different EMR clusters within a customer's account.
Is EMR like the most popular one that people are using?
No, it displays all of the clusters that are in the customer.
So I'll see multiple right here. Like as my project continues to grow.
That's correct. Yeah. In this example, I've deliberately chosen this example because this is an example that anybody can actually deploy through a very, very quick CloudFormation template. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But in a real use case, in a real workload for customers, they will have multiple clusters in this interface, and they can visually browse each one of them. And in order to connect to a cluster, they simply click on the cluster name, and then they hit connect. Now, you see what happens here. The moment I hit connect, we injected this code into the SageMaker Studio notebook, wherein we detected that the authentication type of that particular cluster was Kerberos. We also figured out what the cluster ID was. And we are asking the user to enter the username and password in order to connect to that EMR cluster. Now, this doesn't have to be Kerberos. A customer may set up an EMR cluster to authenticate either with Kerberos or with LDAP, and even no authentication. And that's totally okay. We'll detect those situations, and we will automatically inject the right code here so that the customer can directly connect from SageMaker Studio itself. Now, just note the workflow simplification with just what I demonstrated, right? If you had to do this before, you had to switch, go to a console, find out this ID, go to a terminal, get the the Kerberos ticket, and restart the kernel, wait for a while. You don't need to do any of that now. You simply click that button, connect it to a cluster, enter the username and password, which let me do now. And
by the way, just to explain to people, EMR is called, it's an elastic map reduce cluster. That's where your data could be stored. So just so you know that when we're talking about EMR, it's an elastic map reduce cluster.
Correct. You can run your Spark workloads on EMR clusters. So we say initiating EMR connection, and we are going to be connected to the cluster. That's it. You didn't have to do anything else. So this is a really significant simplification of the workflow.
And this is the output of what would normally be shown in something like a terminal or something then. The initiating EMR connection and starting Spark application, things like that.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay. So then what I'm hearing is that this is like actually laptop friendly. I don't need to have my 34-inch monitor and flipping between several different tabs and screens and windows.
That is correct. But I think what is more interesting is what this enables, right? Now that we are connected to an EMR cluster, what can we do? So that's really where it gets really interesting. The first thing I'm going to do is there is a Hive table. There's a Hive database on the EMR cluster. And I want to figure out, hey, what database is there on the Hive table and what tables are available. So I can actually browse the tables through queries that I can write directly from the Studio notebook itself. So what you see here is I'm querying and asking, hey, show databases and show tables that are on that EMR cluster, and then you're able to see these tables. Now, what I see here is there is the movie reviews table, which is what I wanted, because I want to train a model wherein I'm able to predict the sentiment of a given movie review. So great, I found the movie reviews table over here. So let me understand more about what is this table like? What is the shape of the data? Is the data set balanced? These are all pieces of information that a data scientist or data engineer will want to know, right? So I can actually go ahead and query the data from this notebook itself. Just note what is happening over here, right? I am in SageMaker Studio. And when I actually try to do these commands into EMR, I'm starting a Spark job, finishing the job, retrieving the data, and showing it directly within SageMaker Studio right here. And you're not leaving this web browser interface at all. So that's the great workflow simplification that I'm talking about. So let's keep moving on, right? We got the data, like we said, hey, select star from movie reviews, and then we put it into this Spark data frame. We got this movie reviews, and we explored the data, and we said, hey, you know what? There are 25,000 positive reviews, 25,000 negative reviews. Great. It looks like a pretty balanced data set. I can also use a visual display, something like Matplotlib, to demonstrate that, hey, you know what? This is a balanced data set. So now I am ready. I am ready to pre-process this data. I retrieved the data from the Hive table. Now I want to pre-process it and train a machine learning model. So that's the next step that I want to perform. So what I can do there for that is, if I continue along, I can, the data that I received from the EMR cluster, I can actually locally process it. So there is something called the magic commands that the PySpark kernel enables. So these magic commands can be invoked by using the percentage sign that you see over here. So now what I'm saying is we retrieved the data from the EMR cluster, but I'm locally going to pre-process that data. What does pre-processing mean? Do things such as, hey, remove extra white spaces, or try to put the data in a form that a training model can actually use. So I can use SageMaker processing in order to pre-process the data that I retrieved from the EMR cluster locally.
Sumita, when you say locally, what does that mean? Does it mean on your laptop, on your work computer, or where?
That's a great question. So what I mean by locally is any command that you enter in using the Spark Magic PySpark kernel is actually running on the remote cluster. Remember, we first connected to the EMR cluster, and all of the commands are actually running on the EMR cluster. Now, when I say local, it is actually running, the code is running in the context of this particular notebook itself.
Right.
And that's the workflow simplification that I'm talking about. Without leaving your notebook environment over here, you're able to do big data processing. You're able to, access remote Spark clusters. You're also able to run code within your notebook, but you're not limited to just running code with the resources that your notebook has, right? The amazing part about being a part of SageMaker is you can leverage SageMaker processing jobs in order to instantiate other resources in order to run your pre-processing jobs. Does that make sense?
Got it. So we could actually use the local notebook to set up other jobs that will kick off other processes.
Correct. You can use
Got
the SageMaker processing directly from this notebook itself. Okay.
Now a question here. We have a couple of people here. We have Abhay asking here. Is this using Jupyter notebooks?
Correct. So SageMaker Studio is a heavily modified Jupyter Lab environment. So yes, we are using Jupyter.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Cool. So what we did now, just to come back, recap, we retrieved data from a Hive table. We brought it locally and we pre-processed it locally. And this is what a pre-processed data may actually look like, wherein you have the label and then you have the review. So some labels are positive, some labels are negative. Now, the next step in this process is we have pre-processed this data. We now need to train a machine learning model based on the data that we have received. And we are using an algorithm called Blazing Text algorithm that is commonly used for natural language processing for the kind of tasks that we are doing to train the model. And what are we really training the model? Again, just to recap, we're training the model to predict whether a given movie review is a positive review or a negative review. So using these kind of training samples. So within the same notebook itself, I will be able to, I just trained this model using the code here, using the SageMaker training instances. And I also am able to deploy this model to an endpoint. Now is where the fun happens, wherein let's test this model out, right? So I've actually deployed this model to an endpoint. And I love this movie called Whiplash. I'm sure you guys have watched it. So I went to IMDb and picked up the first review positive review that I found. And then I plugged it in over here. And when I execute it, you see that this is a positive review. Just to show another review, I found another and with that, and I'm able to show that, hey, this is a negative review. So let's just step back and see what we accomplished over here, right? What we did is we visually browsed, discovered, and connected to EMR clusters. We saw that we can connect to EMR clusters through different authentication mechanisms, Kerberos, LDAP, no authentication.
Gotcha.
We were able to query a sample data set from a Hive table that was located on Amazon EMR using Spark SQL. And we locally processed data, feature engineered it. We trained a machine learning model, deployed it, and got predictions. I'll just add one more piece of information that you can do with these kind of notebooks. Now, I spoke about using Spark SQL.
Okay.
And as a part of the magics that I spoke about, let me quickly get to the example over there. You can use the percentage SQL magic to directly run a SQL syntax itself directly from the notebook. So you're not just running Python, you can also run this kind of a Spark SQL query directly from the notebook. In addition to that, some of our customers like to use PyHive in order to query a Hive instance, and that's totally fine. You can absolutely use PyHive to retrieve data, to query data from a remote Hive instance. All of these as you saw, I was able to accomplish without even leaving the SageMaker Studio Notebook interface. And that's what we're super excited about.
So Sumita, like when it comes to like, let's say that I did actually have a strong background in setting up machine learning like processes and things like that, which I don't, but like let's say that I did, and I already currently had a lot of these systems in place, but I was using separate technologies, different tools in order to execute them, and I was kind of jumping between different softwares to get everything to work as I saw fit. Like what would it look like to kind of switch over to using SageMaker Studio and start taking advantage of this notebook?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kyle. The main advantage you will see is that you can perform your data analytics or Spark processing, interactive Spark processing, as well as interactive data science directly from one notebook itself. And this is a huge simplification in your workflow, because the alternative is to use multiple tools, multiple interfaces, switch between them. And you need to worry about managing the connections. You don't need to do any of that here, right? A data scientist or a data engineer should rather be focusing on how they can add value to the company, to create great machine learning models and deploy them, rather than worrying about how can I manage connecting to an external analytics source. And so what we're doing is we are simplifying the process of getting access to all of these kind of remote sources of data and analytics, and getting the data scientists and engineers to be productive to do what they are good at, which is data processing and building and deploying models.
Got it. So somebody like me, like again, mobile developer, if I wanted to start learning how to set up these processes, as opposed to learning several different technologies, it'd probably just be easier to figure out how to get it working using SageMaker Studio. So what would be like some of the resources that we could kind of like that me or anybody else that's viewing could look at, like, to get started?
This is a great question, Kyle. We just launched a blog this morning titled Performing Interactive Data Engineering and Data Science Workflows from SageMaker Studio Notebooks. This blog goes through elaborate detail of all of the examples that I spoke about today. But we go one step further. If you look at this part of the blog, we have buttons called Launch Stack. If you click these buttons, you will be able to launch a stack with the EMR clusters, with the SageMaker Studio Notebooks. We will set up the entire environment that I have over here for you. And you will be able to run all of these examples with just, with a 15-minute setup. And we automate the whole process using this Launch Stack button. We'll share the link to this blog on chat. But this blog should be a comprehensive view of how you can use all of the capabilities that I described today.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Sumita, thank you very much. This has been quite a lot of information. So everybody here in chat, make sure to check out the link in that somebody's going to be posting right now in the chat if you want to check out more. Sumita, thank you very much once again for showing all of this. There's been a lot of code here.